$1,000 is the starting price for a single premium hand-rolled cigar, while the most exclusive specimens reach valuations in the millions. Why does a product composed entirely of organic matter command such a staggering market value? It seems simple at first glance, as there are no precious metals or gemstones integrated into the structure. But in reality, the worth is hidden within the labor-intensive complexity of the assembly. One can notice that only hand-rolled tobacco leaves are used in the construction, yet the path from seed to finished product spans several years. Everything only gets more complicated as the raw materials move through the production chain. More than 600 pairs of hands touch the tobacco throughout its transformation into a luxury item. Each leaf must undergo hundreds of individual technical steps to ensure the structural integrity of the cylinder. It is visible how workers meticulously sort the harvest by color, texture, and vein thickness to maintain consistency. But this is just the beginning. The process is only gaining momentum during the mandatory aging period. 5 years is the duration often required for the tobacco to reach the necessary chemical stability and aromatic profile. One can notice the slow movement of air in the curing barns where the leaves hang in precise rows. The equipment gradually monitors the humidity levels to prevent any deviation in the fermentation speed. Transition to the next level. Renowned workshops operate with a level of precision that mirrors high-end mechanical engineering. Because without this rigorous sequence of fermentation and hand-rolling, the cigar would lose its status as a refined, handcrafted product. Therefore, every movement of the artisan is calculated to ensure the draw and burn rate remain perfect. The process is now ready to reveal the inner mechanics of these elite manufacturing facilities. The transformation of the raw leaf into a finished masterpiece proceeds through the workshop at a measured pace. 250 million cigars represent the massive annual export volume currently flowing from the Dominican Republic. This staggering figure has allowed the nation to surpass the historical dominance of its neighbor, which was once the undisputed benchmark of the industry. Why did the global leadership of the cigar map shift away from the sacred grounds of Cuba? One might assume political shifts or trade embargoes were the primary drivers, but in reality, the transition was fueled by a relentless pursuit of technical superiority. Brands like Davidoff, Arturo Fuente, and La Flor Dominicana have refined the manual labor of hand-rolling into a precise industrial art form. Transition to the next level. One can notice how modern production facilities in the Dominican Republic have replaced traditional Cuban methods with rigorous quality control. The equipment gradually monitors humidity and leaf integrity to ensure consistency that older traditions often lacked. Between a heritage-rich Cuban product and a modern Dominican alternative, the choice depends on whether one values historical legacy or contemporary technical perfection. But this is just the beginning. It only looks obvious that a cigar is merely a collection of dried tobacco leaves. At first glance, these objects are synonymous with high-end luxury and social refinement, leading many to perceive them as a safer alternative to standard cigarettes. It gets more complex further on. One single cigar can contain between 10 and 20 times the amount of nicotine found in a cigarette. Because the chemical concentration is so high, the body does not even require deep inhalation to absorb the substance. Toxins penetrate the system through the oral mucosa, ensuring that regular use leads to a powerful physical addiction. The process is only gaining momentum. Persistent exposure to these toxins gradually degrades the physical structure of the mouth, larynx, and esophagus. It is visible how the chemical load damages gum tissue and creates a high-risk environment for oncological developments over time. Passive observers are not exempt from the physical consequences of the combustion process. Cigar smoke is physically denser and significantly heavier than cigarette smoke, lingering in the air with a higher concentration of particulates. Therefore, even without direct consumption, frequent exposure to this dense smoke can trigger chronic lung and respiratory issues in bystanders. The chemical transformation of the tobacco leaves concludes with the release of these heavy vapors into the surrounding environment. The material journey of the tobacco concludes at this stage, leaving behind a complex legacy of craftsmanship and physical impact. 100 seeds weigh less than a single gram, with each individual grain being significantly smaller than the head of a pin. Why must such tiny seeds be handled with the precision of a laboratory experiment? At first glance, the scale seems disproportionate to the final product. But without this rigorous start, the delicate tobacco plant would fail to develop the complex cellular structure required for a premium burn, as even a minor nutrient deficiency at the seedling stage ruins the eventual elasticity of the leaf. 6 weeks is the exact duration these microscopic seeds spend within the controlled environment of a sterile greenhouse. Specialists sow them into trays filled with sanitized soil and a thin layer of growing medium that is just dense enough to trap moisture while remaining translucent to light. One can notice how automated systems track temperature and humidity with near hour-by-hour precision. Within only a few days, the first green shoots emerge from the dark substrate. But this is just the beginning. The seedlings grow steadily until they reach a height of approximately 5.9 to 7.9 inches. Transition to the next level. At this specific stage, the plants possess the structural integrity required to leave the greenhouse and enter the open fields. On high-end farms dedicated to handcrafted cigars, the process of transplanting is performed entirely by hand to ensure no delicate root systems are crushed. Workers place each seedling into straight rows within loose, aerated soil, maintaining spacing measured down to a single hand's width. This precise gap prevents leaf overlap and allows the roots to anchor deeply into the earth. It seems like a simple arrangement of plants, but in reality, this spacing principle is never compromised even on modern farms using mechanical assistance. The process is only gaining momentum. Early morning is the only time planting occurs on major plantations throughout the Dominican Republic and Nicaragua. During these hours, the sunlight remains gentle and the humidity stays at its peak, keeping the soil soft and malleable. This environment allows the young plants to take root without the risk of heat stress or rapid moisture loss. It is visible how the workers move quickly before the sun reaches its zenith. 6 to 8 weeks of intensive cultivation follow once the plants have established themselves in the field. Growers monitor leaf color, stem firmness, and soil moisture every single day to adjust irrigation frequency. Depending on the terrain, the equipment gradually delivers water through drip systems or manual watering. The goal remains the same for every plant, ensuring an even distribution of nutrients to every leaf. 4.9 feet is the maximum height the plants typically reach before pale purple flower buds begin to form at the very top. This physical change signals the necessity of topping, which is the manual removal of the upper tip before the flowers can bloom. By performing this action, the plant's internal energy is redirected away from reproduction and concentrated entirely on the development of the leaves. Everything only gets more complicated. Lateral shoots are also selectively removed by hand to prevent the dispersion of nutrients among unnecessary growth. This ensures that the remaining leaves mature with total uniformity and full thickness. When the stalk finally exceeds a height of 4.9 feet, the harvest begins. One can notice how the workers move through the rows, selecting individual leaves rather than cutting the entire plant. 1 month or more is required to complete a single harvest because the process unfolds leaf by leaf in clearly defined layers. Unlike mass production tobacco, the plant is left standing after each picking round, so the remaining tiers can continue to mature under the sun. Each specific position along the stalk produces a leaf with a different strength profile, aroma, and nicotine content. It gets more complex further on. The lowest layer is known as volado, consisting of thin, lightweight leaves that burn with high consistency. These are used as the combustion base inside the filler to maintain a steady, even temperature during the smoke. About 1 week after the base is cleared, the viso leaves from the middle section are collected. These are thicker and more elastic, providing the aromatic balance and structural integrity of the cigar. Ligero represents the final and most intense stage of the harvest. These topmost leaves are thick and saturated with essential oils and nicotine due to their prolonged exposure to direct sunlight. This is the strongest leaf type, and it is placed deep within the core of the cigar to add body and extend the finish. The camera glides along the rows as workers carefully stack these oily leaves into ventilated crates. Industrial tobacco can be mechanically leveled in just a few minutes, but premium cigar tobacco is harvested exclusively by hand. Each leaf must remain entirely intact, unbruised, and unbroken to preserve the integrity of the oils and the physical surface of the leaf. The reason is simple, as only a leaf picked at the exact stage of ripeness is capable of providing the required flavor profile. The raw material is now ready to move to the next processing phase without haste. Tens of thousands of harvested leaves transition from the fields to traditional curing barns, moving away from the influence of industrial drying machinery. One can notice how each individual leaf is folded precisely at the stem before being hung over horizontal wooden poles that stretch from one end of the structure to the other. Why is the curing process initiated in such a primitive environment? At first glance, the barn seems like a simple storage space, but it serves as the site for a critical biological transformation rather than a mere removal of moisture. This environment allows chlorophyll to break down gradually, while aromatic compounds begin to form within the plant tissue. The process is only gaining momentum. The atmosphere inside the barn undergoes a physical shift that is visible in the changing state of the air. In the early days, the scent carries a raw, grassy sharpness accompanied by a distinct hint of acidity. As time passes, the equipment-free environment facilitates the release of a softer and sweeter aroma from the rows of hanging leaves that fill the ceiling like a sprawling web. Over a period of 30 to 45 days, the leaves dry slowly and transition in color from a vivid green to yellow and finally to a copper brown tone. This specific shade serves as the signature of properly cured tobacco. It gets more complex further on. Experienced workers do not rely on digital instruments to gauge the status of the batch. Instead, they test readiness through physical touch and the scent lingering in the air. Humidity and airflow are manually regulated by opening or closing the wooden windows that line the curing barn walls. A delayed adjustment of just a few hours can cause an entire batch to become brittle and crumble or develop white mold and rot completely. This is not the limit of the risks, as a loss of aroma can also occur if the airflow is not perfectly managed. Once the tobacco leaves reach the proper level of flexibility, they are gathered and organized into large piles known as pylons. These stacks are not mechanically pressed by heavy machinery. Instead, the leaves compress gently under their own weight, creating the necessary pressure for natural fermentation to occur. To monitor the internal state of the pylon, workers insert a hollow metal tube deep into the center of each pile. Inside the pylon, the temperature begins to rise as a result of natural biological reactions. If the internal temperature exceeds 122 degrees Fahrenheit, the entire stack is dismantled, turned by hand, and rebuilt. This procedure must be repeated 3 to 5 times over the course of the fermentation cycle to ensure uniformity. Transition to the next level. Fermentation times vary strictly based on the physical characteristics of the material. For thicker, oil-rich leaves such as ligero, the process can last up to 6 weeks. Thinner leaves like viso or velado require a shorter period, typically lasting 3 to 4 weeks. After completing the first fermentation stage, the tobacco leaf has undergone a noticeable transformation in both texture and chemical composition. This is the moment when master craftsmen begin the manual sorting phase. Individual bundles are carefully taken apart and spread across large tables to be examined one leaf at a time. Each leaf is evaluated based on its original position on the plant. Its thickness, oil content, color, vein structure, and elasticity. From there, the leaves are separated according to their intended roles in the final product. The filler forms the inner core, the binder holds the structure together, and the wrapper serves as the outermost layer. The wrapper is selected specifically for its smoothness and visual perfection. Everything only gets more complicated as the sorting concludes. The leaves are regrouped into bundles of approximately 35 to 50 leaves and tied with natural fiber cords before being transferred into storage rooms. For premium cigars, some producers go even further by labeling each bundle with the harvest year and growing region. This preserves precise traceability for the years of aging and blending that lie ahead. Before the leaves can be blended, there is one absolutely critical step remaining, which is the removal of the central stem. If left intact, this rigid part of the plant would cause the cigar to feel uneven and burn inconsistently. However, the stem cannot be removed while the leaf is dry and brittle. For that reason, the entire bundle must first be reconditioned through a process of carefully controlled rehumidification. Each bundle is placed inside a humidity-controlled room or covered with damp cloths for approximately 12 to 24 hours. One can notice how the material regains its suppleness during this period. Once the leaves reach the proper level of softness and flexibility, the destemming process begins. Workers pull gently along the length of the leaf, separating the stem from base to tip by hand with calculated movements. For wrapper and binder leaves, the central stem is removed completely to ensure a smooth surface and a tight, seamless wrap. The process is only gaining momentum. For filler leaves, however, only the lower portion of the stem is removed. This leaves a small structural core that helps maintain an even burn and extends the overall smoking time of the finished cigar. Once the fermentation and destemming are complete, the leaf bundles are compactly tied and neatly stacked inside aging rooms. Here, time itself becomes the only active ingredient in the refinement of the tobacco. Some premium wrapper leaves are aged for as long as 10 years before they are ever put into industrial use. Each bundle is carefully labeled with the tobacco variety and the date aging began. Once the aging process is complete, the leaf bundles are ready for the blending stage. This is the moment when master blenders re-evaluate every aged leaf once again to ensure quality. Their task is to combine different leaves so they complement one another, with some sustaining combustion and others shaping the aroma. The most experienced blenders can detect these differences through the lightest touch of their fingertips or by the scent carried in the air itself. Once the blend formula is finalized, the material moves toward the shaping phase. The construction begins with the filler, where each leaf is rolled into a loose spiral. This forms a soft core that allows smoke to flow smoothly through the finished cigar. A binder leaf is then wrapped around this core to hold the entire filler firmly together. The binder is a thicker, more elastic leaf applied by hand and pressed in a spiral motion from bottom to top. One can notice the absence of folds or gaps as the binder is secured. Next, the cigar is placed into a wooden press mold, typically containing 6 to 8 grooves. It gets more complex further on. The mold is held under moderate pressure for several tens of minutes to set the shape. Once removed from the mold, the cigar is passed to the wrapper table for the final exterior layer. Here, the roller must work with extreme finesse, leaving no creases and concealing every seam. Each turn of the wrapper is smoothed tightly while preserving the natural elasticity of the delicate leaf. At the final step, the head of the cigar is neatly trimmed and a small drop of vegetable-based adhesive is applied to seal the structure. For a skilled artisan, this entire process takes only 2 to 5 minutes. After being rolled, a cigar cannot be packaged immediately, but must undergo a manual quality inspection. The inspector gently rotates the cigar under focused light, checking whether the wrapper surface shows uniform color and whether any creases or tears are present. The cigar is then tested for density by pressing lightly along its length. This ensures the filler is evenly distributed with no hollow spots or overly tight areas. Cigars that meet these standards are set aside for additional aging, lasting from several weeks to several months. Packaging represents the final logistical stage of the production chain. Each cigar is sorted by product line, size, and wrapper color before being placed into wooden boxes or premium paper boxes. Cedar wood boxes remain the most popular choice for their ability to retain humidity and preserve the natural aroma. Some high-end lines are packaged entirely by hand and fitted with official bands and brand labels. These may even include certificates listing the batch number, harvest year, and the specific roller responsible for the craft. The material is ready to move to the next processing phase without haste. 100% of the value found within a wooden cigar box is defined by the integration of historical legacy and mechanical precision. Each individual layer of the tobacco leaf is positioned according to strict structural requirements, representing a physical manifestation of craftsmanship passed through generations. One can notice how the artisan's hands move with calculated speed to maintain the structural integrity of the cylinder. It gets more complex further on. Why is the manual rolling process preserved in an era of total automation? This method allows for the immediate detection of density variations that a machine might overlook. A single hand-rolling motion ensures that the internal channels for airflow remain unobstructed. The living craft depends entirely on the tactile feedback of the artisan's fingers against the organic material. It only looks obvious to describe this as a simple habit, but in reality, the interaction with the product functions as a technical ritual. The experience is characterized by a lack of haste and a complete immersion in the physical properties of the tobacco. The equipment used in the cultivation and curing stages operates ceaselessly to prepare the raw material for this final stage. Transition to the next level. Automated humidity controls and specialized storage environments protect the finished product from degradation. Every movement in the workshop is dedicated to the preservation of a specific standard of quality. One can notice how the final wrapper leaf is stretched without tearing to seal the assembly. This concludes the primary stage of creation, where the material is prepared for its intended use. Thus, the craftsmanship reaches the standard ready for the further stage of its life cycle.